Welcome back into the Inside Line IndyCar podcast presented by IndyStar. I'm sports editor Aaron Ferguson at IndyStar, joined by Zion Brown, who is back in the greater Indianapolis area. Whew, what a weekend. And you got a lot of people would like to spend an extra night in Nashville that have to go home and be responsible for work. So I'm curious, Zion, how did you spend your extra night in Nashville?
I finished writing my story about how the race got postponed. I packed up. I grabbed an extra McAllister's box from the media center. I drove back to the Nashville airport, to the Nashville airport area, which was extremely hard to get to because unlike most races, when I'm like there 4 hours after everybody leaves, like everybody was leaving around the same time. I ate the McAllister's and I went to sleep. I know, exciting, right?
We talked in the last episode about how drivers might go out to the bars and like play the drums, like I think Will Power did last year, or like how they might like how they might experience Nashville differently. Of course, it was different last year because it was the finale. But I'm guessing much of the paddock probably spent their Sunday night like you.
Yeah, we'll get to it in a moment. I know David Malukas did. David Malukas fell asleep before I did, so congrats to him, I guess. But yeah, I think most people were just like, "Well, let's go to sleep and come back here tomorrow." I don't believe anybody did any sort of public or social outings after that postponement was finalized.
I don't blame them. Well, what a weekend it was. I think the biggest the biggest announcement, as we just had a conversation before starting here in the office, which you were a part of virtually, was the fact that this was supposed to be the second most viewed race on the calendar behind the 500, because you had the World Cup final on Fox, and then you had IndyCar starting right after it, right after the awards presentation and everything. And I was traveling this weekend, but I do remember seeing your message of, well, there's a cloud in the sky, so let's see what happens. And I think we all know what happened.
Yeah. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure we talked about this last week about the fact that rain was in the forecast. Maybe we didn't, but like I remember whenever I first saw that, which would have been last Monday or Tuesday, the skeptic in me was like, "Oh, this is what's going to happen." Like, did I think it was going to get postponed to Monday? No, but immediately I was just like, "This race is not going to be on immediately after the World Cup, or maybe it'll be on for half an hour." And then we'll have to, do Indy 2.0 or Gateway 2.0, whatever you want to call it at this point. But we didn't even get there. Like you said, one, I don't know if it was my fault as a media member and my other media members, or if it was just IndyCar's fault, but the amount of fans that did not realize that this race had a rolling start time was astounding. I thought that was kind of known.
We talked about it here.
Yeah. And to be fair, we talked to Kiffin Simpson on Friday. He didn't know that until Bob Pockrass told him. So take that for what you will. But this was always going to be a rolling start time. And it was supposed to start around 5:30 anyway. And I believe the first bit of lightning struck around the track like 5:30, 5:31, somewhere around there. So like that was going to happen anyway. And then I see all the tweets that are like, why are they showing so much of the World Cup post game, post match, whatever? One, that was always the plan. You can't show the World Cup and not show the trophy being given to the team. That's ridiculous. But then two, once the rain and the lightning start coming down in Nashville, Fox has no incentive to just go cut to Nashville where it's raining and nothing's happening. You're going to show even more of that World Cup celebration than you were going to before. So that was 5:30. The light-ish rain began. I tried to keep a decent track. These are estimates, though. The light rain began around 6:50, and this is in Eastern time. Of course, we were in the Central time zone. So that rain comes for about 15 minutes, maybe. And then it's like, okay, let's start to dry the track and let's get this going. And we felt kind of close, I feel like. I think we were probably less than half an hour away from cars at least being rolled back onto the track. And then at 8:45, it was just like a monster. Like just that. I don't think anybody expected heavy rain of that sort to come down at all. And then once it did, that was it. The track was gone at that point as far as what you could do on on a Saturday night. Like maybe you could have started the race close to midnight, or that Sunday night rather. But IndyCar didn't want to do that. I think the teams would have thrown a fit had they done that. And so just about 15 minutes later, we got the news of the postponement, and everything had basically gone to waste. So I've got a lot of thoughts on this. I know every single person watching, listening, and online has a lot of thoughts. I would kind of throw it back to you as somebody who, obviously wasn't there with me and, wasn't maybe getting the exact moment by moment updates of what was going on, but obviously, got a glimpse and a grasp of the situation. Like, are you blaming IndyCar? Are you blaming Fox? Are you what do you think, Aaron? I need to know what somebody who isn't as close to it as I was thinks about what happened here.
Yeah, so I can't remember if we were live when we talked about this, but I was running my own race up to Cedar Point from Indianapolis to have a day with friends. And I just remember thinking, because I was listening to the World Cup final. Well, I actually watched it while eating dinner. I saw some of extra time, and then when Spain scored, I was like, all right, well, I'm going to get on the road with Argentina down to 10. But, I was listening to it and then saw a couple of notifications from teams. And I was like, okay. And then, I was, pretty close to our Airbnb and was, getting excited because I was like, oh, I could probably watch this race from the Airbnb and not miss anything when I thought I was going to miss everything. So I was super excited. Of course, that's not what happened, as you outlined. Who to blame? I mean, nobody. That's not the answer anybody wants to hear. But I think in the grand scheme of things, you want this sport to grow, right? Fox has a stake in wanting the sport to grow. IndyCar, Penske Entertainment wants the sport to grow. I think the drivers want the sport to grow. There's more branding and business opportunities with more eyeballs. And so, I don't fault either side for this. I think they did what they needed to do to move this sport forward. And it didn't work out. And I think that's okay. You can be upset. I think the emotions around the decision that I've seen from a lot of fans, I'm not trying to validate everybody's opinion, but I think I think the frustration and the anger is fair, and the sadness of not having the Sunday night race. And really, I don't think anyone should blame anything about Sunday. I think this is more of a conversation of when they moved the race to, doing it at 3 p.m. Eastern time on a Monday, and then some networks or some markets, cut off early for the news. And I think it's the effects of the cause, the Sunday night delay into Monday is really what drives all the frustration and anger. And yeah, I think there's a lot of fairness. To me, that's a separate conversation. I think the way Sunday went down, there should be no blame. I think the reaction to it and the fallout from it, that's really where we need to dive in and be okay, I don't know if IndyCar was offering cheaper tickets for people on Monday. And if I was a fan who paid the Sunday night rate, I would also be irate, especially if you're letting those fans come in and pick any seat they want. There's just a whole mess that came of this decision, which your first year on the beat, and it was the first postponement in how many years? 10?
The first full postponement in 10 years. Pocono in 2016 had this. Barber in 2018 got going and then had to finish on a Monday. So definitely history. This is the first time this has happened in the Roger Penske era of IndyCar, as far as him being the owner of the series, right? They have never dealt with this with him in charge. And so it was kind of uncharted territory for everybody in a sense. And it was unfortunate that it had to come on this day that I know the series has been looking forward to since they put the schedule together throughout late last summer. We do have the benefit of hindsight. And I guess one of my questions would be, did Nashville need to be the follow-up race for the World Cup? It's been a fun race these last 2 years. So you understand why they put it there. However, we know it rains here in Nashville more in July than it does late August, early September, like it had been. The conditions of the track are much warmer, which we'll actually get to that in the actual race in a minute, but that made the race worse. Let's just be honest. This race was not as exciting as it was a year ago, mainly because of the track conditions. And just everything around that. Like, I'm questioning, like, okay, you don't want it to be like Mid Ohio, maybe, but could you have put Road America here and still maybe felt like you had a fairly exciting race to introduce to soccer fans, many of which may be also F1 fans that are used to watching a road or a street course anyway? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But it definitely went so incredibly south on IndyCar. And you mentioned the fan part of it. I'd need to ask somebody who bought a ticket directly, but to my knowledge, those fans did not get necessarily any sort of refund or a reduction on how much they paid for those tickets. Even though, like you said, I think you said it, the tickets to get in on Monday, if you hadn't already had one, was just $10. And so that was an issue. They cut off all paddock access, which I understand, but I also understand why that made fans upset, especially not even paddock access necessarily, because I understand why that was cut off because everything happened so quickly on Monday. They just wanted to get it through. But even to cut off the access of, being the winner circles pictures and being around that on Monday, that was kind of something that people were pretty irate about. And I understand that part of it. And so you look at it and you say, okay, they were hoping for maybe a couple million viewers on this. I don't know if there was an exact number they were shooting for, if they even knew, Fox and IndyCar, what their number, what their goal was to approach, but they're going to go from that to a race that, they're going to be lucky if 500,000 people watch this race. I don't think they did, personally. I could be wrong. Maybe we get the numbers in tomorrow and it's like 600,000 or something. I doubt it, right? I think it'll be less than 500,000. So it all turned incredibly south. And then I've got a video here I'll pull up of Joseph Newgarden, but they shortened the race. We talked about this last week for sure, Aaron, about how exciting it would be to have these 75 extra laps that would make the race almost 400 miles long, which is like, okay, like we're getting like 80% of the Indy 500. Obviously a different track and everything. And obviously it's not as big of a deal as the Indy 500, but just from that like battle of endurance and everything, we felt like we were getting that. We didn't get that. Not to spoil anything if you somehow have been living under a rock, but Alex Palou won the race. Joseph Newgarden finished second, and I asked him. He was upset about the brevity of the stints and just the fact that he didn't really feel like he had a chance to catch up to Alex Palou. And I wanted to know how he felt the change of race distance affected that.
Given all of that, do you feel like if this race was 300 laps, maybe it ended up differently, or no?
I mean, today that would have been great because then we would have had more full stints, or hopefully, unless there was going to be a lot more yellows. I didn't mind the yellows. It's just you can't give up the track position under the yellows. So that's probably, we just had less yellows. That would have been ideal.
I don't know if last night you even had this conversation with your crew or anything, but did you guys think the call to make it to 25 was right, or did you feel like 300 would have been still safe for everybody?
I don't think it matters. I mean, I think 300 would have been fine. We could have done 500 today. I wasn't really worried about it.
So that's from him and the way he felt about how that ended. I'm not sure if every driver felt that way, but you could sense the frustration between his Fox interview with Jack Harvey, which was a classic, like, I don't even know if that lasted 20 seconds with him and Jack Harvey. And even still, that's 20 minutes later when he enters the press conference, that Joseph Newgarden just felt like he should have won this race, and that had it been a normal Nashville race in many ways, I think he feels like he would have won this race again.
Yeah. I wanted to go back to something you said before that, which is
go ahead.
Bad podcast hosting, because you just played a clip that we should be talking about. But I want to go back to the conversation of like what race should have followed the World Cup, because I think that's really, it kind of mirrors the conversation we had in early June, where it's like, okay, you have all this momentum from the 500. Should you put an oval right after it when you have this captive audience? And you could be like, look, we're doing this again at a different scale. And I think it's arguably the best racing that IndyCar has is on ovals, hotly debated, as we know. So, like, okay, if you don't want to do Nashville after this World Cup, like, do you do Gateway? We know the struggles that we have with Gateway. Like, I understand, like, maybe you want to do a road or street course to familiarize many European fans. Obviously Spain, big country. A lot of a lot of F1 fans, I'm sure, and you've got Alex Palou as the series champion in IndyCar. So like there's a lot of familiarity that would carry over there, but like I don't know, I still think like ovals is something different that would actually make people more curious to be like, okay, what is this? Or maybe they watch the 500 and they're like, okay, that was great. Like, let's watch another oval. This will be fun. Like, I think you could bring people in just as easily with another oval. So then the question is like, okay, what should they have done differently if not Nashville? Because like a lot of these markets are kind of similar in terms of temperature this time of year. You never know when a system is going to produce. I mean, we talked about that a lot with Gateway. Like St. Louis is just a humid city, and it's almost like Florida where it's guaranteed to rain at some point. You just don't know when. Not always, not to the magnitude that Florida has with its coasts, but I just remember many Cardinals games going to. It's like, well, there's going to be a rain delay at some point. You just don't know when, and so like I don't know what the answer is. Like to me, I think doing an oval was smart. It just didn't work out.
Yeah. I lean toward you. I'd be curious, what they're saying right now. Assuming people are in the office, I guess, I don't know, on 16th and Georgetown right now, if they are kind of echoing your sentiment, or if there is, at least some of those decision makers who are, once again, using the benefit of hindsight to say, okay, we shouldn't have done this, we shouldn't have done that. And like theoretically, it's like, oh, we'll see what happens again in 2030. But I guess the World Cup rights may be up for grabs. So who knows if the World Cup will even be on Fox then. So it once again, it just went incredibly south, like to an extent that I don't think anybody could have imagined. Again, like I said, last week when I saw rain was potentially like kind of up in the air, I was like, man, I feel like that's going to happen. I did not feel like I would still be in Nashville on Monday night, and I was. So it just did a complete 180.
Like, I think it's easy to look at this in the moment. Like, obviously very upset. It was this weekend. A lot of people love going to Nashville. Like, I think this about me. I like to scroll TikTok. It's like one of my doom scrolls. But like also I get like surprisingly good story ideas from TikTok just from like seeing different things because it is such a different algorithm. But like I saw a lot of people who were like, oh, I'm so excited to go to Nashville. And I also saw the aftermath of people leaving a rain-soaked Nashville. So like I think you look at like the immediacy of it, and I understand the frustrations and people upset, and whether you had to take work off Monday or you had to drive back home and miss the race entirely, like I understand all that. I think if you look at what Fox has done this year with the ratings, especially that we've seen over each race, like they've piggybacked off the World Cup and it's worked out great. And you're exposing a new audience to the sport. Like I think they would just make the gamble again 10 times out of 10. Like I don't think they think twice about that. I think they think twice about how they approach the after effects, but you only have so much time to figure that out. I mean, it was 9 p.m. and they're trying to figure out when to do all this. And there's a lot of different moving parts that I think people maybe don't think about or don't understand, or, I mean, I'm sure they would understand it. They probably just don't think about it. Like think about all the volunteers, think about track availability, think about different contracts you sign with the speedways and everything. Like there's so much that goes into putting on one of these huge events. I mean, it's hard. Like it's hard to hear that. Fans don't want to hear that. Like I know you want us to sit with you and sulk in it. Zion quite literally is because it extended his week. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just don't think anything changes if they knew what the end result is. I think the only thing they would try to change is maybe put a dome over the speedway. That's it.
Yeah. I guess where I'll end or like kind of trying to transition. Where do you stand from what you know? I know you didn't get to watch all 225 laps. Do you kind of agree with Joseph Newgarden, however, that it probably should have stayed at 300?
I mean, I guess why did they move it? Because they cited – no, I know. They cited track temperature. But, like, is that why? Or, like, is it network reasons? Because they're running up against the 6 o'clock news or the 5 o'clock news?
Yeah.
Like, there's other factors at play than just the heat. Like, that's the reason they gave. But so then, like, I don't not going to pretend to know what Fox programming is on Monday night. I don't watch reality TV or anything, but like, I don't know what programming they would have had to move, or like, then you're upsetting the whole other audience. Like, I don't have a good answer. I just don't have a good answer. Like, I think changing the strategy over that too in such short notice, like, I understand his frustrations. Like, it's a whole different game plan that you then have to come up with.
Well, at least I will say to that, I had that conversation actually with somebody before the race yesterday. Yes, you're changing the strategy, but theoretically, you have, whatever documents you need to prepare for a 225 lap race because you did it last year.
Sure.
Still, like you said, it's overnight, so you get about 12 hours to figure that out, if that. So that might have been an issue, but at least they had done it before. I agree with Joseph Newgarden. I looked at the heat after the race ended, just to kind of compare. National Weather Service, you can do like a 3-day history, and the heat, like right before the rain came in on Sunday, it was exactly the same as the worst we got yesterday. So if it didn't rain at all on Sunday, I know it would have cooled down because it was supposed to be an evening race, so it would have cooled down a little bit, and it did cool down obviously because of the rain and everything, but it would have been just about the same heat. There weren't many differences. Actually, the heat index on Sunday got a little bit higher. I think it got up to 107 on Sunday. Now, that was pre-race. That was like, I want to say it was like in between the Indy Next race and when the IndyCar race would have actually started. But the heat index got higher, and the actual high temperature, I believe, they both tapped out right around like 91.5 degrees. So I get it. You want safety for your fans, for your crew members and everything, but I can't speak to fans because I wasn't outside like they were the entire time necessarily. But the way Joseph Newgarden put it, at least, was that, hey, I was good. The guys on my crew were good. The guys and girls on my crew were good. And he obviously was exaggerating when he said they could have done 500 laps, but he seemed to think 300 would have been all right.
Yeah, I think I don't know. I don't know what I think. I had a thought and then I don't. It's just interesting to me. Like, I just attended a conference where it's sports editors, and it's like, you think like there's a lot of sports talk in this business, and there's a lot of sports. Like, yes, we're covering a sport, but like, I also think we just think differently to the business side of things. Like, it's just a very different element. Like, yes, we analyze what happens on track, off track, on the field, off the field, but like, we try to like explain things in a bigger picture and the bigger sense of things. And so, yeah, I don't know. This whole thing is a fascinating case study. Like, I think there's a lot of questions that are being asked internally at the IndyCar offices, and then I don't know if they'll be asked externally, but like, yeah, I mean, this is going to be an interesting case study moving forward, especially for something first time it's happened in 10 years, as you mentioned, first time since Penske overtook it. Fox has done this with many other sports, but IndyCar is different than, one Major League Baseball game. Like, it's a whole different world. So fascinating. Joseph Newgarden finishing second in the Nashville resident hometown, won it last year, finished second, which was the start of a great day for Penske, all things aside. David Malukas finishing P3, Scott McLaughlin finishing P4.
Yeah, a great day for that team, except for the win. And we know that team's about winning. So you can sense the frustration from Joseph Newgarden in that clip and just all throughout the press conference. Believe it or not, the second question I asked him there, the answer he gave was the longest answer of the entire press conference. And that was like 16 seconds or something like that. So you can take that for what you will. But yeah, I mean, I think we expected this team to be fast here. They've had at least one driver be fast at every oval. Malukas and McLaughlin were, of course, on the podium at the 500, and then Newgarden had won the other two ovals before this year. So we expected that, and they were. And I think there was probably a moment for all three of those drivers in this race when they thought they were going to win it. Once again, Joseph may be going toward that last stint, or if the last caution with Dennis Hauger spinning out doesn't happen, I think he thinks he wins it there. David Malukas, I think, would have had a legit shot to win this race from the back had I don't even know how to describe what happened between Scott Dixon and Alexander Rossi, but had whatever that is not had happened, I'm pretty sure David Malukas would have won this race. And then Scott McLaughlin also kind of got caught out with the Dennis Hauger caution after just like pitting too early. And he still had a pretty good restart to even get back to fourth place, but that ended his maybe lone chance of winning this race, as him and Kyle Kirkwood were up near the front, near Newgarden and near Alex Palou. But a strong day for that team, but it kind of feels like even still in ways the story of this last season or two for them, where we're just like, okay, like it wasn't a disaster on Monday. Excuse me, I almost said Sunday. It wasn't a disaster, but man, they like results, and they like the results to be wins. And they once again had Alex Palou outdo them, and this time on an oval.
Yeah, and you mentioned Malukas from the back. Well, what if he didn't have to start at the back? Like, obviously, and it was almost not him. Accidentally, it was almost not him in the seat, because they were going to send Connor Daly out to run an install lap basically during qualifying. And then they're like, wait, that means he would have to drive Sunday. And what if David's okay? And fortunately, David was okay after a horrific crash that sent him to the hospital. And then there was like, what, a two hours where they're like, oh, Connor Daly's driving. Oh, wait, no, he's not. Like, just take me through the wild Saturday that was for Malukas and Connor and Penske. And I will say I saw some people, I'm sure they were AI generated, but I can't confirm. But I saw like some wild memes on Twitter that was pretty funny with Connor. Unfortunate for him that he didn't get the opportunity to get in a seat. But yeah, man, what a wild day.
Yeah. The best way I can put this is that this weekend for David Malukas felt like his whole entire career in one weekend. It's like 30 minutes into practice, he crashes, but he was the second fastest in practice. Kyle Kirkwood was the fastest in that first practice of the weekend, and David Malukas was second fastest. So like he had some tremendous pace, but then he crashes into turn two. It has happened before. I forget who it was with. This has happened before, but it's not an injury you see very often, where the steering wheel comes off and just slams into his right knee and then dislodges from the car. And I didn't love the race broadcast yesterday, I'll say that much. But I will say on Saturday, the broadcast crew like nailed it on the very first replay. They were like, oh, that steering wheel hit his knee. Like, that looked pretty bad. So we go out to the medical center. I assume it was an X-ray machine, but I don't know this for sure. They had to like transport him from the Vanderbilt Life Flight, like permanent building in the infield of Nashville. They had to get him from there back to the IndyCar transporter that they use for most races anyway, because they said some machinery failed in the Vanderbilt center. I don't know what the machinery was, but I think by the fact that he ended up going to the hospital, we can maybe take a guess at what it was. But then he goes, he spends about 30 minutes in each building. And then they're like, hey, he is headed to the hospital in a private vehicle. So like somebody drove him there. He didn't need an ambulance to get there. I looked it up after we sat back down in the media center. We weren't within 9 miles of a hospital. So like wherever he went, it was at least 20 minutes away from where we were at the track. And so then all of a sudden the conversation becomes, okay, who is here, who that can get in the car? And the first two options, the two that seemed most obvious, were Connor Daly and Callum Ilott. I believe Callum Ilott literally got to the track like right around the time this accident happened. But he was there. And then we were like, okay, well, Miles Rowe, we know his Penske connection. However, if IndyCar follows the rule book, Miles Rowe would need a rookie orientation to do an oval. So it's like, okay, maybe that's out of the picture. Then you continue to think about who's there. Jack Harvey was there. This came to my mind hours later. It was like, oh, I guess if they needed to, they could have asked Jack Harvey to get in the car. And then this last guy, I think it would have been certainly in breach of his contract at this point. But I guess Ryan Hunter-Reay was there too. So like maybe, but like, so it was going to be Connor Daly or Callum Ilott. Had like brief conversations with both of them coincidentally. And Callum Ilott told us that he at least reached out about it. But this was after they had already kind of like honed in on Connor being the guy. And Connor told us that he did sign a contract. Penske did not finish their signing of the contract because they were waiting to see if David Malukas could come back, but he told us he at least signed something. So take that for what you will. But yeah, he had a short-lived 2-hour tenure as a maybe Team Penske driver. But we were all fortunate to see and glad to see that David Malukas got back to the track. You mentioned it. They essentially decided not to qualify for two reasons. The car was in shaky conditions, to say the least. I don't think they knew if the car would have been ready during qualifying. And the second part of that is just IndyCar told the team, like, hey, if you put Connor in the car, Connor is doing the race. And so they didn't want to risk that without knowing for sure whether or not David Malukas could do the race. And then he had a great race. Had to come back from being lapped just on some unfortunate pit stops. Still made it to the podium. He was exhausted after. Usually we would have seen him and Joseph Newgarden do their press conference together, and then Alex Palou and Barry Wanzer do theirs. It went Joseph Newgarden, Wanzer, and Palou, and then like 30 to 45 minutes later, we finally got David Malukas, and I just asked him about the toll it took on him. He came to us after taking some IVs and some fluids after that crazy race he had.
The nature of your injury, do you feel like it was something that it was worse for you to race today, or would was it better by the fact that we raced a day later?
Oh, it was better that we raced a day later. I was look, going from yesterday, my quote of it was, if we raced yesterday was survival, today was game on. That's kind of this now. So yeah, getting that to sleep. I'm not gonna lie, I heard the rain on my bus and I was like, oh, that's really nice. So I was already lights out at 8 p.m. I just thought, if I go to bed, I was like, if I go to bed, we're not gonna race it. It's gonna be committed. So I woke back up a couple minutes later and they told me that they canceled it. So I said, I knew it. So it's good. It was awesome, really good.
To follow up on that, you said you kept telling yourself one more. Do you think you could have gotten through 300 laps today or yesterday?
Well, I think with the power of adrenaline, I think we maybe could have gotten there. It was because, to be honest, on track, I mean, my face was covered in salt, like salt crystals coming on. There's snot coming out my nose, but I didn't feel any of that till the end, or any yellow flag. To be honest, I was just running on pure adrenaline, focus on what's in front, and I just kept asking, "Give me one more, give me one more." And I'm not gonna lie, like halfway through that race, I thought that like I'm done, but we just kept going, and the body just kept pushing. So adrenaline is a beautiful drug.
It's unbelievable.
That was so true to David Malukas form. Everything about that interview.
Yeah, it's unbelievable when you think about what he accomplished. It's funny. I was talking earlier today with someone just about like the personality David Malukas has and the following that he has, but especially the personality. Like, I'm grateful that like he is unapologetically himself, because you just get like I just feel like he's very candid and he's just very, very comfortable in who he is, very confident in who he is. And yeah, you hear that in all his interviews. I mean, shoot, the example I brought up is like, usually these drivers are trying to get in and out of the media center. And I remember at IMS, we had like a freaking 10 to 15 minute conversation about Portillo's. It's just like, it was me, David, and like a bunch of other people just standing there talking about Portillo's. And it's like, he's just very comfortable in who he is. And like, man, thank goodness he's okay. But like what a race too. Like, Miles Rowe a couple of weeks ago at Gateway went from back of the pack to first. And David almost did the same thing. And these are very different races, obviously, but I think it's clear to see the talent he has, and it's still remarkable. He hasn't won a race, which I think he kind of he didn't allude to that, but he did joke about finishing third. I guess he didn't joke, but he did mention like how great it was to finish third. And in my mind, I was making the joke, I wonder if he's relieved that he didn't finish second, but he's probably just relieved to have finished at all after the weekend he had.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about his candidness. I remember going into the 500 and just saying, like, if David Malukas wins this race, like, he could maybe, leapfrog himself into stardom, right? I think everybody that follows IndyCar closely knows what personality he is, but because he hasn't won a race yet, because this is his first year on a big time team, we're looking at it and we're saying, okay, like, if he wins this race, he can become that star or whatever and become this known name. And he lost the race. And I think his popularity probably grew just as much as it would have had he finished first in that Indy 500 race, because everybody saw, like you said, the raw emotion of him, being in tears on pit lane and everything. And then even the next day when he talked to us saying, I'm glad people saw that emotion from me. I think that kind of gain him a lot of fans that maybe don't pay attention to IndyCar for all 18 races of the season. And yeah, it's just another scenario where it shows the resilience that he has. Again, you see the talent, the speed, and everything that he has. And now with 6 races left, you're looking at it and you're saying, still, we're still sitting here saying, when is that win coming? And is it going to be this year? Or will we have to wait another year to see if David Malukas gets his first win? But I think we'll have a shot in pretty much all 6 of the remaining races. So we're still in wait and see mode, I'll say.
Another interesting moment this race was Alexander Rossi getting plowed by Scott Dixon, which it was interesting to hear how they described it. Rossi made it seem like it was a foregone conclusion he was going into the pits, and I think Scott was surprised to learn that. Curious for your thoughts.
I don't see what Alexander Rossi saw or what he thought he saw, right? Like at the point when I talked to him, when we talked to him, I don't think he'd actually seen a replay yet. So maybe he saw the replay later on yesterday and has come to change his mind. But it seemed like he was pretty much past the pit commit line and in the middle of the track. And so his argument was, yeah, I was slowing down because you have to slow down to pit, which is like, duh, everybody knows you have to slow down to pit. But like, I don't know. It didn't look like a guy that was pitting until the very last moment. I think Dixon said it. He said, I thought there was something wrong with Rossi's car. So he was just trying to get around him. And then when Rossi, went low or stayed middle, that's when the contact happened. Rossi goes spinning into the wall. Dixon barely makes it back to pit lane. And he ends up, he finished 7 laps down in the race. And I don't think Scott Dixon didn't have great pace anyway. So like, it's not like he was going to contend for a win or a podium, unless he just had some great restarts, but just both drivers having their day ruined there. Rossi had a little bit better pace and maybe would have had a better race, but I don't know what he saw there. I really don't. And just another one of these races for him in these 2 seasons he's had with ECR, where it's just like, how did we get to the point where this is how the race ends for you? Like he's had too many of those, I would say, in these last 2 years.
Yeah, I agree. Like when I watched it back, and obviously listened to everything, like I just don't like just looking at where he was at on the track. I'm like, what are you talking about? It doesn't look like you were pitting. It looked like one of those road rage brake check incidents. Like that's what it looked like.
That's a great analogy. That is what it looked like. I don't. Again, I can't wait to listen to whenever this next episode of Off Track is published to see if he changes his mind on after seeing the replay. But my God, I didn't see what he saw there at all. Just to be completely honest.
And another tough weekend for ECR. Christian Rasmussen retired as well, finishing 22nd. Alexander Rossi finishing 23rd. Yeah.
Again, they both qualified fairly well. We came into this race looking at both cars, especially Rasmussen, as we know him on the ovals, like looking at them as like, hey, could they win this race, or could they really compete in this race? Especially if it was, less marbly and we actually got the 2 lanes like we gotten in previous years. I think both drivers would have had a legitimate chance to win the race. Mm-hmm. And then it was just chaos during the race, especially for Christian Rasmussen, who has never had the pace. He had to pit like one or 2 times, I want to say, when off cycle, just because something had gone wrong in his car. And I mean, outside of that podium he got in Gateway, it has just been disappointing finish after disappointing finish for Christian Rasmussen, who is just barely hanging on by a thread, staying in the leader circle right now in 22nd.
If for the record, I know anybody who's watching this on YouTube as opposed to listening through our other platforms, I'm not drinking Java House. It's just a cold brew. So just for the record here. Yeah, tough day for ECR, but we got to give someone their flowers. And that is a rookie who has struggled mightily this season in his first year. Mick Schumacher, top 10.
Yeah, P8 for Mick Schumacher, best result now of his young IndyCar career. And this was the P8 off of speed. He just had it. He just had the speed, especially when his teammates didn't. Graham Rahal, I don't know what to say about what has happened with Graham Rahal on the ovals this year. Like we've given him so much praise for the road courses. The street courses have been, I'll say, fine, whatever. But like every single oval has been an adventure for Graham Rahal. Had some issues with the car on Saturday, and he looked so uncomfortable in the car on Saturday because of those issues that they weren't even able to figure out until later that night after all the practices and qualifying had ended. And then yesterday, I actually never got an answer. I don't know why he exited the race with 15, 16 laps left. I don't know what happened to him. But he was never fast. At no point was he, like, literally at no point this weekend was Graham Rahal fast, or, did he look remotely competitive amongst the rest of the field. Louis Foster just caught some bad breaks, I will say. He had some pace early, even led some laps. He led 10 laps. Now, he was off cycle. Like, I don't think anybody thought he was going to win the race at any point. But he had decent pace early in the race, and then he just, because he was off cycle, got caught off on some bad yellows, and at that point, his chances of winning were over. He affected the end of the race because Alex Palou had to get around him, and Joseph Newgarden couldn't get around him as effectively as Alex Palou did to lap him right there on those last 2 or 3 laps. But you look at Mick Schumacher, best result for him, outdoing his teammates by quite a bit. And, we talked to Mick after qualifying on Saturday, and he made it clear, I want to be back in IndyCar, which, to my knowledge, that's the first time he has just said those words out loud, right? We wanted to ask because that's a question now as far as what happens with him. And we all know there's been a lot of talk about what's going on there. But he said he wants to be back in IndyCar. I don't know if it'll be with RLL. I don't know if it'll be at all anywhere in IndyCar, but he said he wants to be back. And you look at it from this perspective, he's been the highest finishing rookie on the last 3 ovals. That's not necessarily all Dennis Hauger and Kyle Collette's fault, right? Like, Kyle was great in Gateway before his engine failed. Dennis didn't even get on the track at Gateway, but like, the numbers are the numbers, and the numbers say that for 3 straight oval races, this guy who we didn't think would be good at ovals has outperformed the other 2 rookies on the ovals.
Yeah, it's kind of funny when you put it that way, because like I would not think that, having watched the ovals this year. Like, he'd never, this week aside, like he just has never looked to be that competitive. But for a guy who never ran ovals, like, he's figured him out. Like, he's, I don't know, what was this, the 4th oval?
Yep.
Like, good for him. Like, that's a pretty quick learning curve. As we talked about, I don't know, a couple shows ago, it may have been the last one, but like, as we've talked about, like, when it comes to like Christian Lundgaard and the decision for Arrow McLaren to move on from him, and it's like, okay, it's not necessarily the end for Lundgaard, like, team aside, wherever he ends up, he's going to end up somewhere. But like when it comes to ovals, like, usually the winners of the 500 are older. They have to have that experience. They have to go through the growing pains. So like, I think like this is a pretty important moment for Mick Schumacher, whether it's RLL and his future there or his future somewhere else. Like, I think he can at least put, he's got the stats and the results on paper to back up whatever argument he wants to make about his, not just his growth, but like where he is at on ovals is something, to go into next season with. So good for him, and good for him for being like, no, this is where I want to be.
Yeah, I thought it was important, not important for him to say that. I'm sure he said that behind the scenes, but I think we were all just curious, right? Like, it hasn't been a great season. You didn't commit to this long term, and we don't know what. I still couldn't tell you what his long term, goals are in racing. But for now, he is in IndyCar, and for now, he has stated out loud that he wants to be in IndyCar in 2027. And to me, that's what matters at the moment. And if he can, have a strong stretch here, I'd be surprised if anything is decided on his contract in the next before Portland, essentially, or even before Markham, which is after Portland, right? Like, I think he needs to show another 2 or 3 races where he is semi-competitive. And then maybe we do start to look at, okay, what are his prospects for next year, whether that's RLL, maybe like a Junko seat or somewhere like that. But this is at least a good start for him.
Yes, absolutely. We kind of brushed over it, but Alex Palou, he's back in the winner's circle, and not just back in the winner's circle. Has he? Can we like anoint him the winner of the series? I mean, he's got an 83-point lead on David Malukas, 87 on Kyle Kirkwood. He has certainly separated himself this weekend.
I'm ready to call it personally, because I think we all did go into this weekend believing that one, if not both, of David Malukas and Kyle Kirkwood would be faster than him. And even Pato O'Ward, who, after he won at Mid-Ohio, he claimed he was still in the championship race. And hilarious that Pato O'Ward finished 7th, because all weekend long, it didn't feel like he was a top 10 car on the track at all. But he got lucky the same way Palou got lucky kind of at the end with the Dennis Hauger restart, or the Dennis Hauger caution and everything, and he somehow finished top 10. But even still, that 7th place finish does essentially nothing for Pato O'Ward as far as chasing Alex Palou down goes. So I'm ready to call it, because I picked Kyle Kirkwood to win this race. I think we all knew that David Malukas would have a shot to win this race, and Kyle Kirkwood won the pole, led a lot of laps, and maybe would have been at least on the podium, I think, if not for having him being on pit lane when Dennis Hauger crashed. But at the end of the day, that happened, and now Palou has won an oval for the first time this year, still just the 3rd oval win of his career. And coming up, we have Portland, Markham, and DC. Like, there's no, I think I'd be shocked if Alex Palou didn't win one of those races. I'd actually give him a better chance to win all 3 of those races than I would for him to win 0 of those 3 races. So, like, I just think making up that gap, if you're David Malukas or Kyle Kirkwood at this point, it'll take a prayer.
You would be a horrible odds maker.
You think there's a better chance he wins 0?
No, I just think, like, odds makers, typically you would have Palou versus the field. You would take the field in that situation.
No. Maybe I stated that.
No, I know what you're saying, but like, okay, I don't know. Never mind.
I would just be shocked if he won 0 of the next 3 races. I'll be honest.
No, I agree with that.
I wouldn't bet on him to go 0 for 3 or 3 for 3, to be honest. But like, I would be shocked if these 2 street courses, which he has a couple street course wins this year, and the road course in Portland, which he was great on last year, I would be just stunned if he didn't win one of these races.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm trying to think of, like, I don't know. I guess I would be more surprised if he did not win one. That being said, I don't think he's winning all of them either.
Me neither. Can I list his Portland career finishes off?
Yeah. Is it just first every time?
No. First, 12th. First, second, third.
Okay. It's a pretty good day at the office.
So, like, I think this was the chance for Kyle Kirkwood or David Malukas to pounce. They didn't do so. And I think we're at the point where I'm ready. As long as Alex Palou starts the next 6 races, I'm ready to say that I believe he's going to win his 4th straight championship and his 5th overall.
Yeah. Okay, so that opens up another conversation of, like, is that bad for IndyCar?
I think the problem with IndyCar is that it is an extremely talented field. I've heard Scott Dixon, Will Power, Graham Rahal, I think as well. Like, all the older drivers have said, hey, this field, the drivers, there's more depth than there was when we started our careers 15, 20 years ago. Or in Scott Dixon's case, 25 years ago. It's been a while. But they've all kind of said that at one point or another. The issue is that Palou is obviously better than everybody else. And you don't have a clear 1A or a clear 1B, however you want to put that phrase. Like the way that when Dario was on his extreme run at the early 2010s, Will Power was kind of like right there, even though he usually lost to Dario in those scenarios. He was right there with Dario Franchitti. Whereas right now, like David Malukas and Kyle Kirkwood have traded second place in the standings for 2.5 months. That is the issue with IndyCar, is that It's not like Palou is going back and forth with one person. It's
Yeah.
okay. Palou has a good result one week. Oh, Palou loses to Pato one week, but then he loses to Kyle Kirkwood the next week. Then he loses to David Malukas, or Christian Lundgaard. And it's like, it'd be better or a more competitive title race if it was literally just one of those drivers who was consistently on Alex Palou's level, and then the other 3 or 4 were maybe a tier below. But instead, Alex Palou is on a tier completely by himself, while there's like 4 to 5 on that next tier below him.
Yeah. No, I think that's well said. Like, I don't know. I think when you think of sport, like baseball, it's like, okay, well, the Dodgers are the best team and everybody tries to dethrone them. And it's like, can anybody dethrone them? And like, I don't know. I think it's good for baseball to have a villain. And I'm not trying to vilify Alex Palou. That's not what I'm trying to do. Like, by all accounts, from everything I've seen and read, like, and
Is Kate still within? Is she still within earshot? Is that why you're softening the blow here?
yeah, exactly. No, like, I mean, even in just like brief interactions, like, I think he is like just super kind and great. And like, I just love like how he lives in the moment, and seeing his family at the 500 in 2025 after winning was just like so wholesome. So I'm like not trying to like, I don't know, but like in sports, you have winners, and when the winners aren't your guy, they're the villains. Like, that's just how it works. And like, it's interesting because he doesn't play that role, and nor should he have to, but like, it's just like, okay, I don't know. Like, are people tired of seeing him win? Probably. Is that going to change anytime soon? Maybe when there's a new car. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I'm there with you. I think the best chance next year will probably be David Malukas, because at the very least, we know he can win out at every single type of track, to an extent that really only Pato Award has shown, to that same extent. Like Kyle Kirkwood, the road courses are still a show. Definitely, I mean, he has improved quite a bit on the oval courses over the last 2 years, but I wouldn't call him an oval specialist. Christian Lundgaard, we've gone through that. Like I said, it's David Malukas and Pato as the only guys who are as well-rounded, I would say, as Alex Palou is. So when we look at next year, because once again, I'm ready to call this year's race over. When we look at next year, I think those are the 2 guys that will have the best chance to dethrone Alex Palou.
What about, like, I don't know. Silly season still has a long way to go, but like, let's say he's teammates with Christian. You think Christian's got a shot?
I'd have to see it, because Scott Dixon hasn't been able to outdo him. And I know Scott Dixon's older now, and probably not as good of a driver as he was the last time he won a championship in 2020. But he's going to be taking over in Scott Dixon's car. Maybe the setup and the just overall strategy will be different, right? Like, I'll be curious if that's the case. Obviously, we don't know. But if that's Christian Lundgaard in the 9 car, like how Mike Hull maybe adjusts the way he strategizes, because we haven't seen Mike Hull call strategy for anybody else in 2 decades. So
Yeah.
I don't know what that'll look like. But I would just have to see it. And it's not even that Christian Lundgaard, once again, it's not that he has to win on an oval. Like, obviously, it'd be great to see him win on an oval, but like, he's got to finish top 5 on some ovals. And right now he is far from that. Again, I didn't think it was enough for him to get, replace Aaron McLaren. I'm not justifying their decision, but at the end of the day, to win a championship, you've got to show some strength at all 3 types of tracks. And just the fact of the situation is that he has not shown strength on ovals yet. So I just don't see him contending for a championship next year, but I am with you to say at least maybe in 2028, maybe he'll be able to.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy. So IndyCar does not return until August 9th in Portland, which kicks off one of the craziest sequences of the calendar. But being here in Indianapolis, we do have the Brickyard 400. Yeah.
The end of the in-season challenge for NASCAR this weekend. So either Ryan Blaney or Todd Gilliland will win $1 million, depending on who finishes higher in the race. We'll have coverage all throughout the week. Like I talked to Adam Alexander about that this morning. We got some more. I don't want to even say it yet. We got some more things coming though. So yeah, IndyStar.com, Brickyard coverage.
Yeah, I know our intern, Jessica Garcette, it's her last week, but she loves auto racing. And so we kind of fixed the schedule a little bit so that she could do Brickyard. She's super excited about it. I know she has talked to, well, you'll just have to find out on IndyStar.com later this week. But one thing that I'm looking forward to that I will put out there is so she went to the University of Florida and she drove the Daytona 500 track 5 laps. And it's kind of funny. She was telling me a little bit about her experience earlier today. And like, she even had like a spotter because there were multiple cars on track. And she's like, yeah, they were telling me to go faster and to throttle and like giving me RPM updates and letting me know when I'm getting passed on the outside. But she is writing something about that experience. And she also rode in the 2-seater across the bricks at IMS I guess last week technically.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to see. Well, she did tell me, some of the differences as we talked about it, but like I'm curious to like really get the first person account of the differences between Daytona and Indy. Obviously, two very, very different tracks for a lot of reasons, but I'm excited to read that. I'm excited for some of the other nuggets we have up our sleeves, and yeah, I mean, racing is racing. And like, I know I kind of clown on the Brickyard because it's not the same as Indy 500, but last year's event was great. Like, it was my first NASCAR race. And I remember both the race on Saturday night, the Connor Zilic one, was just like such an exciting story. And I know there was a lot of like, oh, he's ready to be called up now. Like, this is it. He can do it. So there's a lot of that out of last year, but then also like just the overtime, the constant overtime to finish the Brickyard last year was just super exciting. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited to follow from afar as I go on vacation again, but we will have you covered. Our whole team will. And then you get a couple of weeks off before Portland. So, or at least one. So,
and then I will, at least I'll be home for Portland, which I'm like split if I'm happy about that. No disrespect to Portland, but I've heard, not great things about that track and the overall situation there. But I think I'm mainly happy that I'll be home for Portland, given the fact that it becomes nonstop at that point. So I'll be in DC. We'll see how that goes. We'll see how Markham goes, and then Milwaukee and Laguna Seca to close out the year.
Yeah, geez Louise, it's a sprint to the finish, which is just, I don't know. Hopefully we can surge across.
We got to have a Felix Rosenquist like into the year here.
Yeah, and then we'll get printing plates that are forever commemorating the moment, and then hopefully you're still on our team next year. Even though you hate me.
Well, that's all I've got. I think that was a tremendous way to end this podcast.
With even though you hate me. Yes, I agree.
Stay tuned to see if I extend my contract.
Yeah.
IndyCar racing.
Silly season.
IndyStar racing.
I will say this. Here's my pitch to subscribe to the YouTube page. I promise you're going to want to see something later this week. So go to YouTube and look up IndyStar TV /IndyCar, where you can watch this podcast and see that the coffee I was drinking that was not Java House. It was, I don't know the name of the coffee shop, but it's here on Georgia Street, which, sorry, almost gave you free advertising. But you can find an interesting conversation. I'll just say that coming up later this weekend on the YouTube page. Zion breaks everything down, on track, off track, interviews from behind the scenes.
Watch the video from yesterday, because I stood out there and stared directly into the sun. As David Malukas said, salty face and all.
That's good lighting.
Just for the sake of content.
That's good lighting, though.
Exactly. I know where to face.
Like you're a TV
unfortunately.
guy.
Yeah.
I learned that in my TV days too. You stare into the sun, no matter how awful you feel. That's great. Anyway, YouTube page, IndyStar.com. We'll have all your brickyard needs covered. IndyCar too is a little bit of a break from that, but we still have plenty more coming on that too. So we appreciate everyone's support. Thank you for sticking with us. Yeah, go tell a friend to tell a friend, and we will talk to you later.